what I've been doing hasn't been working. So why do I keep wanting to think that I have to keep doing what we've been doing, but still see different results now because I'm just talking to somebody new for feedback and for guidance, right? So we really had to sit down and go, look, first honest conversation has to happen with myself. What I've been doing up to this point is not working, right? For the goals that I have, it's not working. So I have to be willing to explore alternative methods of nutritional intake, water intake, sleep habits, stress management, and exercise as a way to try and get me to being able to feel stronger, more healthy, more fit, and more proud about my body and what it can do for me because I'm struggling with a lot of things, right? And they're not all physical, but they're a result of how I've taken care of my health up to this point. So getting more mindful and more honest with ourselves was really step one. Um, Step two was I wanted him to keep doing what he was doing, right? He loved those races. So I was like, look, you got a triathlon coming up. I think he had it in October. Um, so he had this triathlon coming up in October. Ended up doing really well. The weather was just crap for him, but he did very well compared to what he thought he was going to be able to do. Um, so he kept up his swimming, biking, and running. Okay. But I told him, I was like, here's all we're going to do. We're going to gradually introduce 1 to 2. We're going to start with one strength-based training day into your routine in one of your days that you typically have some time available, but you're not really doing any biking, cycling, training, anything like that. So he was agreeable to that. Kept that up for a couple of weeks. Started to feel really good about it. Said his old shoulder that he'd had surgery on, it was really limited, really weak, really painful. He was not able to do a lot of things with it. Talking about how it was feeling a lot better. He was starting to feel stronger. He was starting able to do more. He felt better on his runs, his bikes, his swim sessions, and he was really excited. He felt that he was ready to start maybe adding a second day into it. Meanwhile, he was starting to lose a significant amount of weight because not only were we adding in just like one strength training day a week on top of days where he was running, cycling and swimming, but he was also really keeping an eye on how much am I eating and what am I eating. So it was a lot more, he wasn't, perfect with hitting his protein targets. A lot of people were resistant to getting enough protein, right? The protein that they need to support their goals and their health and their longevity. There's some sort of mental block that we think that protein is bad. In fact, this client's wife has told him verbatim, he's got you eating too much protein. It's bad for your kidneys. One, he has a routine physical every year. Levels come out fine for his kidneys. He shows no signs or symptoms or red flags for any kind of kidney dysfunction. Right. So, in the absence of a kidney impairment, a lot of protein is good for you, right? Because it can be filtered out. So, protein is not the bad guy. So, we got him eating more protein, right? That was set at a amount of grams per day, consistent with the target weight he wanted to be at. Not where he was at currently, but where he wanted to be at, right? So that means typically less protein, less calories. So then from there, we kind of experimented around with a different ratio of carbs and fats. But as long as you're coming in at your calorie goal, you're hitting your protein, you can mix and match. You have some flexibility between how many carbs and how many fats you're getting. Okay. So that's what we did with him. As a result, he went from 189 when we started in end of July, early August, and got down to 181, around 180, 181, which he says he's never been below 180 in the last like 8 years, 8 to 10 years, I believe he said. So that was huge for him, right? But this was from early August into July to September, right? So it took him a good 6 weeks really to get there. And this, by that point, after about 4 weeks, we'd introduced 2 strength training days per week, but it was really focused on getting your lifting sessions in those 2 mornings of the week that you're able to make them work, right? So he was doing about 40 minutes to 50 minutes. And he kept up his swimming, biking, cycling because and running because he's got a race coming up that involve all three of those things. So he's feeling good. And what had happened was I think he had gotten, in terms of goal weight, he'd gotten significantly lighter in terms of body weight. Here's the thing though, right? So we hit that mark, and then the race was in October. So he got really low, but what happens was around September, mid-September, then he started gradually kind of creeping back up. What was happening after that 6 to 8 week mark? Well, he was starting to gain more muscle mass now, right? So body fat was decreasing, and now lean mass was starting to increase. So as the scale was gradually kind of creeping back up, he was okay with it because progress picture wise, week to week, or the 2 a month that he would send me, right? I ask everybody to do it weekly, but they don't want to. That's okay, but you're only hurting yourself when you don't. But what he showed me, and we were able to compare kind of start to now at each moment was in time, your body is looking significantly different, right? Like his belly was shrinking, right? He had like a significant protruding stomach area, and it had gotten flat, right? He was really self-conscious about what he called his man boobs, and they had gotten significantly smaller. So across the board, face, chest, gut, everything was looking a lot leaner. He's still telling me even last night, he's like, I'm one notch away on my belt from being the smallest my waist has ever been as a grown man, right? As a father. And so he was really excited about that. But why do I say all these things? Is that yes, the strength training program was important to support his ability to better run his race and prevent his risk of injury because it's such a repetitive nature, right? Same tissues under the same load in the same directions over and over and over again without getting sufficient protein is a really big increased risk for breakdown, right? At some point, it's bound to happen. It's going to get some sort of overuse situation there. So we balanced all that out. And so he was still being really active outside of the gym. He was really being not perfect, but at least 80% consistent with his dietary intake. And he saw massive improvements. Now, what happened after that, right? Just like everybody that starts a fitness goal, right? You hit your goal, you cross your finish line, and then you've got no plan in place after that, right? And that's what I like to help people with. It's all right, so we want to get you to this point, but we have to also prepare you for what life is going to need to look like after that. Because without that maintenance plan in place, that next step program in place, you're going to be one of the 95% of people that gains all their weight back, gains all their fat mass back, and then some, right? So let's stop getting on the roller coaster of fat and fit, fat and fit, fat and fit. And let's find a way to kind of cut out the lows and stay semi-consistent, right, across the board. So that's what we've tried to implement thus far, which he's been able to do. That's the really cool part. So since that time, we're starting up actually this next week. I've got him back into running more. That's also going to help his daily step count, right? Because his daily step count has gone through the crapper, right? Work's gone crazy. He's gone through some emotional stuff that's really kind of blocked his brain and his emotions from being able to kind of push himself forward, right? Outside of somewhat of the comfort zone of, hey, it's colder, it's rainier, I don't want to go outside, I don't want to do anything. I'll do my workouts once a week or once every other week, and I'll just blame it on being busy and stressed out. I'm not sleeping well. So all that aside, right? We understand that those things are going to happen. I understand those things are happening because I've been doing this long enough. I know that you're not going to be able to stay, headstrong, full speed ahead for months on end, years on end. That's impossible. So it's trying to, when the lows hit, how do we mitigate how low we go, right? How do we lessen that trough, that valley that we go through in that season of our lives? So that's what we've been able to do. But he's ready to, he's back on the upswing again. Since really the start of the new year, he kind of limped across the finish line, November to December. But he was able to do so without gaining back all the weight that he had lost thus far and all the fat that he lost thus far. Progress picture wise, he's not where he was in September, October. But really, here's the thing. He looked his best, where he felt the most proud about his body, in mid-December around Christmas time, right? So all of that compounding interest of the effort he'd put in was continuing to work in his favor, even though he was starting to slack off in terms of his consistency. Of now, he's no longer swimming at this point, he's no longer biking at this point, he's no longer running at this point, or even getting out to walk, for that matter. His steps he got in happened at work, and that was it. And so he's a GM of a dealership, but that's where he was at. So yes, being able to maintain with better dietary choices, which still he was kind of Christmas season, holiday season, he kind of saw it as, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'll just maybe not do as much of it as I would have done in the past. And that's fine. Like, that's a sustainable lifestyle, right? It's still being able to just, I want to enjoy what I want to enjoy. I'm just going to do less of it, right? I'm just going to manage it a little bit better than I have in years past, to not get back to where I was when I started. So we had this conversation yesterday, and he was wanting, really to get back into the groove that he was in, where he was preparing for that triathlon. So what did we do? Well, we set the date for another triathlon, right? Because that's what motivates him best. I had to sit there and I had to think and give him this advice, brother. What sort of program, what sort of routine do you need to be in? What does it look like in one that you really enjoy, yourself in? Not just enjoying the results, but actually enjoying going through the process, because we have to fall back in love with the process. And I told him, I was like, here's my thoughts, right? You need to prepare for another race, right? Because you need a deadline, and you need something that involves some sort of endurance training, right? That's how you kind of burn your fuse down. And he agreed. So he's already had one in mind. He's planning, but here's where things are gonna go back in the right direction for him, from a slight detour that he was on. And hopefully this is helpful for you. It's not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and stay that way. So after his race in October, he wanted to just take a break from it. He just wanted to be, go to the gym, do that kind of stuff, and then retire from racing. What happened was, while he enjoys going to the gym, lifting weights, doing that kind of stuff, I tried to pepper in some more cardio, aerobic endurance type of things for him. He just wasn't able to stick with it, right? And I know a lot of that too is a mental block. But now he's got this race coming up, and I told him, I was like, look, main thing, right? Step one, focus on your protein, right? That'll help you with your calories, because you're doing okay with your calories. You're not really gaining back a ton of weight. Like, if you increase, it's within a few pounds. But for the most part, being able to stay that steady while really kind of getting rid of most all physical activity is really impressive, especially over the course like a month and a half span. I mean, where you go from being 80% active to being only about 20% active. That's a huge shift, and it's normal, it happens, but being able to manage all the other variables along the way, I think is a huge win for him. And I wanted to reiterate that with him, as a way to kind of measure those non-scale victories. So he felt good about that, and he agrees, right? So if you get back into doing more endurance-based stuff, and hitting those 1 to 2 days in the gym a week where you're doing strength training, you're trying to just build up and maintain and support, keeping a sufficient amount of lean muscle mass and eating enough to support that. So that way, when you're doing all this endurance activities and athletic stuff, you're not using all that muscle that you've gained as a fuel source, right? We want to be able to continue to focus on fat as the fuel source, and fat loss. I'll put it that way, not as a substrate utilization, but actually as a loss mechanism, right? As if you're looking at objective stuff, body composition change. So I told him, I was like, your step count is way too low, right? Because as you lose weight, your body adapts, your metabolism adapts, it slows down because it wants to try to preserve some sort of balance there, right? You've got less weight, so by nature, right, you got less fat. By nature, metabolism is going to slow because it feels like it doesn't have to work as hard anymore. So the way to counteract that and combat that natural process that happens is we have to continue to be active in other ways, right? Getting your steps in check, continuing to get 8 to 10,000 steps a day on average every day. So he agreed to that. And essentially you just kind of have to get to this point where like, am I ready to stop making excuses for why I'm not doing it? Right? Because we can always blame our schedules. We can always blame what's going on at home. We can and have a valid point. But when you think about things that you really want, right? Like goals that you really want to accomplish, whether that be in your business, in your marriage, in your life, whatever, you find ways to make it work, don't you? And so that's what we had to talk about. And he agreed. He's like, you know what, you're right. Like I'm gonna get while we were on the call, I heard him. He went outside, he started walking. He's like, you're right, right? Sometimes we just need to refocus ourselves. So getting the steps up, prioritizing protein, continuing to hit the gym, but really adding in a day of swimming, biking, and jogging, running like he was doing before. So we've updated the program. He's excited again, right? Sometimes we need to be excited about what we're doing. We don't always love working out, but as long as we're doing something that is more enjoyable than something that we hate, that's how we're going to be consistent with it. And I guarantee if when I update you guys in a few months, he's going to feel fantastic again. He's going to be super consistent. As long as we hit that 80% consistent mark, that's where a lot of great things happen. So if there's any kind of takeaway I can give you guys from this call is that getting back to things that you enjoy doing that can be counted as physical exercise, physical activity, you're one, going to be more consistent. And two, as a result of that consistency and your enjoyment and wanting to stick with it, you're going to see better results. Trying to get away from what works for you is not going to work. Now, sometimes what we've been doing, right, that we enjoy doing isn't working for us 100% supporting our goals that we have for our health or our fitness, whatever. So that's where we have to be willing to investigate what other tweaks do I need to make and still find some enjoyable aspects to this process. That's really where the magic happens for people that are able to be sustainable fat loss and weight loss maintenance type of people, right? So I hope that has been helpful for you guys this week as you review back and you think about like what are some things I need to do, right, that are more enjoyable, because as I've tried to maybe drift into this new territory, I've gotten lost in the weeds. And so getting back to what's more enjoyable, it's going to be more sustainable for you because you're going to be more consistent, you enjoy it more, and you're going to start seeing better results just because you're doing it more, right? It's that easy, but it's not that simple, right? And so I hope this has been helpful for you guys, and I look forward to the next call.